Hello and welcome to the BOF, the Meet the Candidates BOF, really important one. I'm going to argue the most important one at SIGGRAPH this week, and that's because we're learning more about the candidates that will shape your organization and the future of SIGGRAPH. So we're very fortunate to be joined by all of our candidates that are on the slate this year. What I'm going to save time, by the way, I'm Rebecca Strelick. I'm the chair of the nominations committee. I'm not very important in all of this, so I'm going to skip right by who I am and what I do. What you need to know is about the people behind me. And in just a moment, they're going to come up one at a time. They're going to introduce themselves. I'm going to time them. They have 5 minutes or less to tell you why they want to serve you and your organization. At that time, when they've completed, we are going to invite our current ACM SIGGRAPH president to the podium, and she is going to give you some information about some very important bylaws changes that are also on the ballot. And then at the conclusion of that explanation, we will open questions to the room. So if you could save your questions to the very end, we'll be as efficient as we can. And thank you so much for joining us. Please begin.
Hi. I'm David Spolster, and I'm running for treasurer. I've attended the SIGGRAPH conference since 1986, and I've been on conference committees or subcommittees since 1992. I love this organization. That's why I'm running for treasurer. The role of treasurer can be broken into 5 parts. First is financial oversight. I've been vice president at both Fortune 500 companies and startups, and managing projects in the $10 million range, which fits nicely with the size of SIGGRAPH. Second role is record keeping. I'm meticulous. You have to be. I've been the GraphicsNet chair for SIGGRAPH 4 different times, and you have to be very meticulous on what's going on to be successful in that role. Budgeting. Budgeting defines my entire career. All the projects I've managed have come in at or below budget. I've also negotiated almost all of the networking contracts for SIGGRAPH, including SIGGRAPH 2020, where I'm going to be GraphicsNet chair again. Reporting. Reporting is critical for data-driven decisions, and it's been an issue for the EC. I'm hoping to bring my programming skills to help with that issue and give us better data-driven decisions off of our data, our financial data. Fundraising. Back home, I'm president of a club that's about 150 people. I helped raise $1 million out of that club. This is not rich people. These are truck drivers. We have a bakery chef and some other things. And we managed to raise $1 million to fund the club for 100 years. I am passionate about student volunteers and chapters. I think they're the lifeblood of our organization, and I want to do whatever I can to help endow them so that they have a strong base to grow from. In the end, I care deeply about this organization, and I would really love your vote to serve this organization further. I'm David Spolster, running for treasurer. Thank you.
It's going to be a tough one to follow. Excellent job. Okay, my name's Brad Lawrence, and I'm also running for the treasurer position, and it's going to be a tough one to follow here. My first SIGGRAPH was in 1994. Since then, made a lot of interesting friends, got involved with in the 98 conference, and ended up being one of the SIGGRAPH TV chairs in 2001. Since then, I learned about the professional chapters, and I brought the Orlando chapter back up and running in 2001 and chaired it for 5 years. Then I turned over and became its treasurer for quite a number of years. Presently, I'm also the treasurer of the professional chapters subcommittee, which has given me a good insight to the organization and what is going on with the finances of it and its schedule. Also the EC Media Chair, taking care of the video streaming and the capturing and trying to preserve SIGGRAPH, which is another way that I'm also really interested in having SIGGRAPH last all year long. And as part of the EC, that's one of the focuses I'd like to make, is trying to increase the knowledge base and get people involved and provide them these opportunities that SIGGRAPH give us for the full year. There's a lot of opportunities in bringing academia in with industry too. And I really would like to see more of that connection, and that's another thing that I'd really like to work with the team on, to find new ways to have the college students come in and actually have industry give them opportunities to get their feet wet. And lastly, I'd like to increase the attendance experience at the conferences. With the EC, they have a lot of things that are a little bit external to the conference group itself, and maybe to bring some fresh ideas in and help the attendee experience. With that, I'd appreciate your vote. Brad Lawrence. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mashuda Glencross, and I'm not running for treasurer. Whoopee! I'm running for director at large. I have been, my very first SIGGRAPH was in 2001, a very long time ago. And I got very excited about bringing some of the magic of SIGGRAPH back home to my local community in Manchester, United Kingdom. And so I set up a SIGGRAPH chapter there, professional chapter, and I used my professional network of people that I'd met at SIGGRAPH to help get people from all over the US to come and give talks at my chapter. It was really amazing, and everybody who in my local area who couldn't come to SIGGRAPH could experience a little bit of the magic of SIGGRAPH. I've had a number of volunteer roles in the organisation, including being on the nominations committee with Scott Owen. I've been on a number of conference committees as well, so I have quite a wide perspective of the organisation in terms of the organisation strategy, the way in which the organisation works, as well as the way in which the conference works. I'm super keen to look at improving the value proposition for our members. We have typically somewhere around 14,000 people that come to this conference in North America, and somewhere around 8,000 to 9,000 that go to the Asian conference. Why are all these people not members of our organization? I would really like to help people in our community, which is a massively diverse community, to gain benefit through mentor networks, through networks to find collaborators, through content for members only, all sorts of really, really interesting value propositions that we as a top organization in our discipline should be giving to our members. So with that in mind, I hope you will all vote for me.
Hello, my name is Paul Strauss. I've been a director on the EC for the last 3 years. I'm running for re-election. I guess voting started in mid-June, and it ends early Wednesday morning, so if there are any people out here who haven't voted yet, you're either major procrastinators or you're savvy voters who wanted to get as much information as possible. I'm going to assume you're in the latter group, so you've all read the campaign candidate statement, so I'm not going to rehash. I put my accomplishments for the last 3 years in there. I went back today and I looked at the statement I ran on 3 years ago, and the two things I touched on were opening up SIGGRAPH more to practitioners and other areas that we actually haven't been addressing for the last many years, and also increasing open access. And I think our efforts in the last few years have made good strides in those directions. The new strategic initiatives we have going are aimed at increasing our value. Mashuda touched on the fact that our value proposition is not really clear or valuable, and we're making a good effort towards that, towards improving that, improving what we can provide to members through the conferences, through the chapters, through education committee, all of these things. So our strategic initiatives that Jessica touched on this morning in her talk, and are you planning to talk about some more, are very important, and I would appreciate the opportunity to continue with them. I think we have some good momentum. I think we're moving in the right direction. So I would appreciate your vote to keep that going. Thanks.
I'm going to do my own timer, too, to make sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Terrence Masson. I'm running for director at large, right? Is that what they're calling it? And I won't repeat either what's in my candidate statement, but tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a husband and father. I've got 2 grown daughters who are in their early 20s. I've got a 6-year-old boy who's learning to program now, which is fantastic. And the reason why I'm running is I really want to give back. So I'm an educator now. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now and the reason why I'm able to do that are because of my mentors, my teachers, and I'm really lucky to be the new MFA Computer Arts Chair at SVA, School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. So I'm able to teach and give back. I've been teaching about 10 years now. I was at Northeastern University for 10 years before being at SVA just for 2. I was a production guy before that. This is actually my 30th SIGGRAPH. So 1988 was my first SIGGRAPH. And I started volunteering almost immediately. One of the best experiences was I was a computer graphics, what's the official title? The ET chair, the computer, animation, changes titles. Animation Festival, CAF. In 2006 in Boston, conference chair in 2010. And I just loved the privilege of being around so many wide ranging people, from educators, researchers, production people, artists. That's just, you can't be anywhere else that's in a better company of diverse people that are just brilliant. So, but more specifically, if you want to vote for me and vote, anyone would be well served by your vote. But I love history. So the thing I'm working on now as a passion project is the history of computer graphics. The tagline for my conference in 2010 was the people behind the pixels, because everything we do in every one of these areas is all about the people. And so that's what really I'm going to be focusing my passion on between now and even more specifically the 50th conference. We're coming up to our 50th SIGGRAPH conference in 5 years from now. So I put together a historyofcg.com to put the stories and kind of relate everybody together to the projects they've worked on and the people they've worked with, because I just love the networking that SIGGRAPH makes possible. What else? So, I mean, what I've done to make me respect our entire global community. As I said, I mentioned I'm a production guy. I got started on the East Coast. I live in Boston and New York City now. Started by flying logos. My first feature animated film job was at George Lucas's ILM in 1991. I worked on Hook and the original Jurassic Park, pre-production. And about 20 films like that. But my daughters like to brag about Daddy that I worked with a couple of kids from the Midwest in '96 to get this thing called South Park on the air. And I don't know who Philip is, but I'm the little farting peanut head called Terrence, of Terrence and Philip of that. So it's, try to be cool to your kids. Yeah, so I've worked in broadcast, feature film, a lot of video game real-time work. As I say, I've been an educator for 10 years. I worked with research groups at Microsoft. And I just love the diversity of the people that I've had a pleasure of working with. So I want to be able to continue that. And yeah, hopefully you vote for me or vote for any of these other fantastic people. But do vote and tell the people that you know to vote, and that the deadline is, I think, 8 a.m. local Pacific time Wednesday. So vote before you go to bed and before you've had too many drinks Tuesday night. But do vote and tell everybody to vote. Is it? Vote tonight. Vote now. Yeah, don't wait. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Evan Hirsch. I'm a director at large. I've been serving on the EC for about 4 years now. I started attending in '91. And since then, SIGGRAPH was this bizarre space to me that's become pretty much my home. And I'm a product designer who started in industrial design with rendering with magic markers. And I started learning you could render on a screen. It was kind of neat. And oddly enough, my career, much like SIGGRAPH, I've worked in games, interactive, and features. And now I'm doing product design again in healthcare, and which is kind of neat with the applied research. I think I've almost touched everything but the art field, even though I have a fine arts degree. And SIGGRAPH's kind of unique like that, in that breadth of it and the richness of our community is always what's motivated me to serve. And I've always felt serving is actually an indebtedness to the community for it's done so much in my career, and that's why I really get turned on by SIGGRAPH. In the last couple of years, as I like to create things, I've had the opportunity to create things. So, we built Real-Time Live in 2009 for SIGGRAPH. And then last year we started the Women's Mentoring Network, which makes obvious sense why I'd be doing that. But what I've been really enjoying is helping the EC, going back as I'm getting a little more mature, which Tony told me is a nice way of saying old in my career, about thinking where my career has been about product strategy and doing more of that with the EC. Since that's how we've started our strategy group in the EC, which I've been leading the last couple of years. And that's really been a lot of fun because it's how do we stay relevant as an organization and not just live on the conference and nothing else. Because there's a lot we have as a community that we should be doing all year round consistently and adding value and having reason to be here and be here when we're not physically here. And that's really what I think is interesting, is that we remain a dynamic living organization. So expanding where we are, but also being true to who we are and walking that balance and doing that at the EC level and thinking about how we create things that are of interest and value and motivation. And that's the work I want to continue to do. So thank you very much.
So I'm Jessica Hodgins, the president of SIGGRAPH, and I'm not running for re-election. I'm going to tell you about the bylaws. Fortunately, I just got elected. So we have these cards that should have been in your bags. Those are an attempt to explain the changes that we're making to the bylaws. We've been working on this for about 2 years now. We've been consulting with people who are experts in governance of nonprofits, and we believe we've come up with a set of changes to our bylaws that'll make us a much more efficient organization and hopefully better able to serve our members. So there are 3 big changes. The first is that the officers would no longer be elected directly by the membership, but instead would be elected to the board, and then the board would select the people that they wanted to see serve in the roles of president, vice president, and treasurer. So we wouldn't have candidates explicitly for treasurer, but we would have candidates for the board, and then we would choose among the people on the board internally to choose the officers of the organization. They would also have shorter terms, so my term is 3 years. The terms of the new officers under this would be 1 year, so we would have a chair-elect, a treasurer, and a treasurer-elect, and the elect folks would be shadowing the people who are in the role currently. So the goal there is to make it a little bit of a more lightweight job. The first time that they asked me to run for president, I said, no way do I have that kind of time, and I maybe should have even said it the second time. So the hope here really is by spreading out the workload a little bit better across the organization, we can put less on the president and have more people who are willing to serve in this role. So that's the first big change. The second big change is that we will run 2 candidates for each open role, so each director position. And that's different than what we do now, where the nominations committee may put forward N+1 candidates for N positions. So we would pair people up. And the reason to do this is to allow the nominations committee to look at the skill set that's currently on the EC, the skill set that we need, and try and do a little bit of matchmaking there so that you can figure out how to ensure that the board really has the right people on it to do the strategy work that we're trying to do. And then the final change is to allow the board to appoint 3 voting members. And this is, again, to try and ensure that we have the right kind of diversity and skill set and geography and all the other things that we care about in terms of the skill sets on the board so that we can really effectively do the business and help the membership as much as possible. So I think it's now the right time for you to ask questions of them, but I'm happy after this session or at the end of this session, if we have time, to answer any questions about the bylaws. It is a complicated set of changes. A lot of them are sort of cleanup and housekeeping to bring our bylaws into compliance. But if you read the full document, I admit it's very confusing and long. The three key things are what I just brought up. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to all the candidates for your words, and really, more importantly, for agreeing to be on the ballot in the first place. That's a testament to your service and your passion for this community, and that's really important. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to open up questions for the room. You may choose to ask a question of each candidate or something more specific based on what you've heard or read in their statements. If you don't ask questions, I will, and my questions will be harder. So, maybe.
So please ask questions. Please. Is there a microphone?
So there's not, but I will repeat the question from the audience. So, are there any questions, please? Ah, great. We have a Jessica question. Yes, Terrence. Please.
Hi, Jessica. Are all the bylaws all or nothing, or do they vote on all those multiple things that I might disagree with one of them and agree with another one? Is it all or nothing vote?
It is all or nothing.
The answer was it is all or nothing. It's a very succinct answer. So, all or nothing, she says. Yes. Are there any other questions? Yes, Adam.
Okay, so the EC has announced a strategic vision for the next 5 years of enabling everyone to tell their story. Should you be elected to the executive committee, how would you support that?
Just for those you not with us in Vancouver, the question was the EC has enacted several strategic implementations in the board and the group. If you were to be elected, how would you enable those strategic initiatives? Who would like to go first? Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Adam. This is easiest for me because I'm already involved and I'm already leading one of the strategic initiatives, which is called 21st Century Digital Presence, which is to make sure that SIGGRAPH.org and the conference websites are worthy of computer graphics and interactive techniques, as opposed to, I think right now, there's a lot we could be doing. So some of the work we're currently looking at is gathering all of the assets we have over the years, including photos and course notes and everything that we've done, putting them in a single place, and then providing access to that, both with a very good searching tool and also a more exploratory knowledge graph where we can start exploring and play around and see what's connected to what. So these are things we're working on. We're also working on community meeting place, which is a longer-term project, and improving our Wikipedia knowledge base. So these are things we're actually already in place. That is a group that I've recently started working with.
Hi, Terrence here. How I'd specifically support the telling your stories. So I mentioned the theme that I had for 2010 conference was the people behind the pixels. So right now anyone can go to the historyofcg.com, and it's specifically to input your stories. That's what it's about. It's about archiving the memories and the stories of all of our pioneers and the people who are getting a little bit older, because it's really important to back up physical media, artworks, programs, and things like that. But when we lose our pioneers, what's up here is gone forever. So that's my personal passion project, is getting them to input their stories specifically in this today, historyofcg.com. So that's just a personal project that I'm providing to the community as a back end and a front end for all of our micro communities to be able to do that. It's a very, very visual, interactive, kind of networked timeline visualization. And then having that all feeding into the 50th conference. So again, that's coming up in 5 years, and I really think it's critical to start planning specifically now to gather those stories and put them forward in some way that people can access them, because that's going to come pretty quick.
I actually have 3 things that I'd like to do in terms of helping people tell their stories. The first would be to help build the community that Paul referred to in terms of allowing people within the community to have a point of access to be able to share stories and support each other and mentor each other. Secondly, I would like to be able to work with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to be able to help more diverse people's stories. We have a huge organisation with a lot of diverse people, diversity including diversity of topic of research, diversity of field, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of cultures, community, all lots and lots of different axes of diversity. And it would be really nice to see people who are not necessarily the leading lights in the field who have exposure, but ordinary people be able to tell their stories and what motivates them to come to SIGGRAPH, why they want to be part of the SIGGRAPH community. Third, I would like to work with chapters to help chapters distribute people's stories at the grassroots level. By engaging people in local communities, we can encourage people to come to our conferences and engage in the broader community. It's at the local level where we also have possibly the most impact in terms of mentoring schemes and networks, ability to help communities get jobs, people in communities, local communities to get jobs, all sorts of value add we can offer to our members through our chapters.
My background's more in the engineering side, so for me, what I would like to contribute to the EC for helping everyone tell the story is more of how to get that story out there for them to tell. And it'd be more on the technology side as far as what we're doing with the video capturing, to have the chapters able to capture their events and be able to spread them through YouTube or through the SIGGRAPH.org site, and to allow the international community to be able to listen to those stories. So maybe I'm probably more effective on the listening to the stories than the curation of the stories on that aspect, but I feel I could bring more of the technology capabilities to help everyone tell their stories.
Well, my role as treasurer would actually be more of a support role. My role would be to properly fund, staff, and manage all these passionate people and projects to enable them to better tell their stories.
What was interesting is when we started with the enabling, when we were in the committee, we came up with this concept. It was interesting because it was really, I think it was a product of the thinking that so much of what we've done has now been democratized and taken for granted. And I think so at the root level, it's academics don't think of themselves as storytelling, but every time you write a grant application, that's telling a story. And how that grant then, the work product of it gets out to people like my hands, that's also telling stories. So there's that level, but really what I've been also equally interested in, probably more effective in, is helping us as an organization find new communities to share our stories with and keep relevant at the higher level, at a much higher level. So we have work with other organizations and institutions and industries. So my personal interest is healthcare. I'm also fascinated by this notion we had of ethics and how that impacts. So I'm personally interested in how we as an organization work at the highest level to get the maximum impact from all our members and enable them and really empower them through democratization of our tools and thinking.
Thank you all. We probably have time for one more question. Yes? Yes, please.
So, now the term is shorter from what I heard from the president, but then there will also be a long-term tradition after 50 years of anniversary of the same. How will you be able to carry your goal, your planning, when it comes down shorter?
The question is, and now the term is shorter, and just for clarification purposes, that the term overall is not shorter. The EC members will still be serving 3-year terms, but if they choose to put forward their name for an officer position, in terms of chair or treasurer, that term will only be 1 year. They'll have an elect term and then their service term. So these folks, if elected, will still serve on the board for 3 years in total. And then just to go a step further, they could choose to be reelected, as some of these people are, for an additional 3-year term. What about the treasurer is the question? I don't understand the question. Right. So there will be some transition in terms of the officers we're electing for this particular election as we transition into the bylaws changes if they are, in fact, voted on. But I think your question is still a good one, which is over the length of your term, how will you address? Because in my mind, 3 years isn't very long, and I think that's why some of these people are trying to go up for re-election, is because they haven't accomplished what they needed to yet. So if I could rephrase on your behalf, in the 3-year term that you'll be looking at, how will you affect change in these impactful ways?
Please. So I'm going to be really honest in my own personal opinion. When I first came on the EC 4 years ago, I don't think we're nearly as effective as we've been the last 18 months. And I think because earlier we were very focused on individual things. And I think what's been really transformative in the last 18 to 24 months, that we've actually started working on team goals. And that's been far more effective and actually far more pleasant. So I think we've gotten out of what I want from my group of friends as opposed to what's great for all of our constituents. And that's why we've been working on the strategic level. What do we need that has the most impact? And that's made, I think it's made us far more effective because we're not worrying about what's interesting for me, but what's interesting for everybody. And it's also a lot easier as a team when you have a shared vision versus people going after individual visions. And I think that's been what's quite unique, because having went on a conference committee, while there's a bit of a shared vision, when you own a venue, it can be very particular and personal. Whether it should or shouldn't is a different question, but it can be. So I think for me, it's much more now about how we work as a team and support each other. So Adams leads one team, Paul leads another team, but we're all working together across teams. And that's what's actually been really making us so much more effective than I can remember.
I'd just like to add on to what Evan has been saying, which is I agree 100% with, is that we have been working much better together for the last year and a half or so towards common goals. We're also working a lot better with the various conference advisory groups. I've been on the, sitting on the North America Conference Advisory Groups for 3 years, actually, and it's been a wonderful journey to see how well we are actually working together. To reiterate what Evan's, well, actually to counteract a little bit, when you become a member of the EC, you're not given a manual and saying, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. It actually takes a while to actually learn what's going on. So 3 years is really not that long a time, because your first year, you're basically learning a lot about how the EC functions or doesn't. And, well, when you want to actually make some change, it takes a while to get some momentum. So 3 years is actually short. This is why some of us are running for re-election, but the 1 year chair and the 1 year vice chair and 1 year treasurer roles will make it easier for us to get more candidates to help us out and smooth the burden out over a lot of people. And Jessica touched on this, but I really want to reiterate that the reason we're doing these bylaw changes is because the best practices for not-for-profit organizations, not nonprofit, is across the board what we were not doing, and we are actually moving in the right direction with these bylaws changes. There may be others coming up along the way, but this will help us be a much more functional organization and be more in line with what the best not-for-profit organizations actually do.
Yeah, just to reiterate what both those guys said, I think regardless of the term, I'm coming into this to learn. So as an educator, I learn as much as I do, from my students as my students learn from me. So I plan on learning a lot from my term on the EC, whether it's a year or 3 years, and take that and just move that forward. So if that makes sense, I think 3 years is not a lot of time at all. And I've worked at every other level of the conference, again, over 30 years. But being physically on the EC during these dynamic changes that are happening now, I'm going to learn a lot and carry that forward, whether or not I get reelected and going into the future. So I'm always going to care about collecting these stories and publishing all through that, history of CG and leading into the 50th conference. So it's all about learning while we're in there.
I agree with everything everyone said so far. 3 years isn't a lot, but I would add to that in that we also on the EC have standing committee chairs, and some of them do more than one term. In fact, many of them do. And the standing committee chairs themselves actually put into practice some of the things that we're talking about from a strategy point of view. And so I would like to work closely with a standing committee chair who may have more of an ability to put into practice some of what we would like to do. And so I think that would help achieve some impact even during the 3-year term.
How to be effective? Play well with others. Listen to your team and listen to our members. Like you said, to learn, to collect the data from our members and our team. And I think you can be very effective when you actually have a very strong team together, which the EC has built an incredible team in the last few years. So what Mishuda said, there's standing committee chairs, and by delegation, you can have within a team membership, you can go quite a ways.
Yeah, how to be effective. Okay, so a treasurer role, this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of things that need to be worked on, but anybody who knows me knows I'm a strong, outspoken contributor, and I see lots of smiles. So no matter where I am in the EC, I will be an effective contributor, and I'm always working behind the scenes like a graphics net, so I'll be helping all the different roles that I possibly can.
Okay, because we have short amount of time and I want to make sure everyone gets equal ability to answer, I'm going to ask a question, and I already warned you it'd be tough. So in 10 words or less, so I'll give you a moment to think about this. What is the worst thing about SIGGRAPH? I don't want you to tell me how you're going to fix it. I just want you to tell me what it is. 10 words. I'm going to count.
The conference is only a week long.
Too many things at the same time.
The conference doesn't last all year.
The conference is wonderful. The value proposition for the membership could be better.
No nap breaks.
Travel expenses are way too expensive, which has nothing to do with SIGGRAPH.
Stretching the rules, stretching the rules. Okay, that took way too short. Anybody else have a last minute question for these folks? Mr. Fuji.
Irrespective of whether you serve on the board, because as an active member, you should be dedicated to the advancement of our community and our people's activities. So, I wish you all good luck. However, I want you to act on your very compelling vision and help the newer generations fulfill those things for you as well.
And there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to say that as lovely and poetically as Mr. Fuji just did. So I will give you the Rebecca version, which is you need to kick ass. And you need to do so whether or not you are found in the position of an EC director at large or treasurer. So with that. Yeah, if you're in this room, that means you care about SIGGRAPH. That's a very good point, Evan. Thank you. So you're either a really savvy voter, like we already heard about, and you're getting more information to vote, or you're here because you're on the pulse and you want to be a part of it. Please hang out after this. All the people you need to speak to are represented in this room to get bigger and better volunteer opportunities at SIGGRAPH. And we need you, and to find out more about those roles, you can go to sigraph.org/volunteer. More importantly, what I'm concerned about is voting. Voting closes at 8 a.m. local time, Pacific, on Wednesday morning. If you have lost your voting pin, you should have been sent an email on June 15th from Election Services. And if you've lost that magical pin that allows you to do so, if you go to sigraph.org/vote, there is a link there that will take you to a voting pin recovery site. Sounds very complicated. I swear to you it is not, because when I voted on June 15th, I pretended like I didn't get my PIN to test that out, and it took me, 2 seconds. So please take those 2 seconds, go to sigraph.org/vote, retrieve your PIN, even though you might not have lost it, and then go vote for these folks so they can serve your organization and your interests. So thank you so much to those of you in the room and everyone else out there in the world. Thank you.